Hi, good day to all of you. Thank you for joining us. This webinar is on ATC training through smarter selection. The shortage of air traffic controller is a common problem. Resolving this shortage requires us to look at the entire value chain from recruitment, selection, training process to retention. And achieving a low attrition rate is important. Achieving low attrition rate starts with recruitment selection. Today, to speak to us about recruitment selection is Johnny Cook and Philip Seitel. Johnny is the head of products in Airways International, and Philip is the training quality manager of Airways International. They will take us through the challenges of recruitment selection and explore some solutions to improve the air traffic control success rates. With that, let me hand the time over to Johnny and Philip. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Johnny Cook. I am the head of products at Airways International. I look after our software development teams here at Airways, focusing predominantly in training technologies. We develop ATC simulators, total control, which we have in the background behind us, beautiful Queenstown. And what we're talking about today is some tools we developed to support Philip and his team in ATC selection, which is SureSelect.
Yes, good evening, good morning, good afternoon to wherever you are in the world. For us, it's definitely good evening here in New Zealand. My name is Philip Seitel. I'm the training quality manager here at Airways New Zealand, and a big part of my job is together with our controllers and together with the training team is the oversight of the selection of new ab initio trainees here in New Zealand.
We'll get going, next slide.
All right, so again, welcome everyone. For the next 40 minutes or so, we are going to share our experience and our challenges we have experienced with many years supporting the recruitment process, looking for new trainees, making sure we have enough candidates coming through the pipelines. This is something I'm super passionate about. I found it very rewarding seeing people who have never even considered ATC coming into an assessment center, coming off the street, and then a couple of years later seeing them to be fully rated controllers. It is something we've had really good success over the years. We have a system going at the moment, or for the last year, more than 10 years really, that enabled us very high success rate in our training. So hopefully by the end of this webinar, you have an understanding on what we think are the key enablers for achieving such a high success rate. And hopefully, you know, there's something useful for you, potentially you could adapt in your processes.
And yeah, and you know, Philip is really our in-house expert in the space, years of experience recruiting and selecting candidates. He is effectively my customer. I'm here to support from a technology point of view. We will be talking about some of those developments we've made to support Philip and his team through the processes. Next slide. So today we're really going to start macro. There are a lot of common challenges across the industry, things that we've seen over the years. We're out there having conversations with other ANSPs, training organisations, and then we're going to bring it, a bit closer to home, and we're going to talk about our experiences over the last 15 years here at Airways New Zealand. We want to focus in on two particular areas that we think, we do things a little bit differently to what we see others doing. And that will largely be around our move to unsupervised testing for initial screening and the rigorous assessment centres that we run as a final layer of selection, trying to find those clean candidates before they enter into our training academies. Then we'll do a bit of a quick technical demonstration to bring some of that stuff to life, and we'll round it out with bringing all of that together to really show and highlight how this multi-layered approach that we've landed on contributes to some really high success rates in our training academies. Next slide. First, just a bit about us. So we are Airways International Limited. We are the commercial arm of the ANSP for New Zealand, Airways New Zealand. And so we commercialize IP that's been developed initially for our core business, delivering air traffic services here in New Zealand. We build tools that we need here in New Zealand. We prove them over a number of years, and for some of that IP, we decide to commercialize it and take it to market. We operate in more than 65 countries globally. A lot of our expertise is around the training and recruitment of air traffic controllers, which is Philip's area.
Yeah, Airways training or ATC training is a big part of Airways International, and surprisingly, given the relatively small size of New Zealand, we do actually have quite a large training footprint. I had a talk earlier to our head of training, and we figured out that over the last sort of 8 to 9 years, we did have close to 550 ab initio students going through our training programs. That's both in New Zealand and overseas, and both domestic and international students.
And as you can see on the slide, we do have a number of areas that we provide services. So my team is the products digital team, largely developing our air traffic control simulators and selection tools. We have an aviation services function looking after our upper airspace, supporting our Pacific Island neighbours. And we have a simulation services based business running out of that team also. And we also have a procedure design function in Aeropath. Next slide. And just to sort of show, where we are working. So we do work all parts of the globe. We do resonate well with other air navigation service providers, and yeah, like I said, ATC training and supporting technologies has sort of been the foundation of our business for a number of years. We also control a large portion of the global airspace. I think it's about 6% of the total airspace is controlled by Airways. Significant portion of that is oceanic. Next slide.
Okay, we thought before we are starting to talk about our specific recruitment approach and our processes, it's useful to set the scene a little bit, talking about the wider industry context. It is probably fair to say that at the moment, ANSPs and ATC training providers face something like a perfect storm out there. On the one hand, there's strong and rising demand for ATCs. The latest CAE Aviation Talent Forecast predicts that there's a need for 71,000 new controllers by 2034. That's less than 10 years away. In many regions, traffic levels have rebounded to even exceeded pre-pandemic levels. And at the same time, there's something like a retirement bubble coming. The issue of having an aging global ATC workforce will certainly become a problem. We see this happening in New Zealand, and I think that's similar for many ANSPs in the world. What makes the whole situation even more challenging is that it is very difficult to increase your intake and respond to that increase in demand on very short notice. Having a limited pool of suitable candidates, having the known training challenges, that it is often quite hard to get trainees through training successfully, makes it hard to upscale and increase your input on short notice. It's the same for, we found that a lot of the existing tools out there are very focused on, I guess, not always ATC competencies, and they require often a lot of admin and input, again, making it quite hard to quickly respond to demand changes.
And interestingly, there is a critical global shortage of ATCs, but here in New Zealand, we actually don't have a a critical shortage. Just through recent years of investment and focus, and particularly in our recruitment strategies and our training, they've resulted in high training success rates to the point that ATC shortage is not something we're actually facing here in New Zealand currently. Next slide.
So having talked about the wider context, just briefly zooming in on why ATC selection is actually so complex. We believe the main reason, or one of the main reasons, is it's just a very unique skill set that is required to be successful in that career. Candidates need to have the right mixture between cognitive abilities as well having the right personality profile, being able to remain calm under pressure, being able to multitask. It is a rare skill set, having the right combination. It is literally finding the needle in the haystack. At the same time, even if you do identify promising candidates, often the training success rates are very low, and they remain low. I think it's fair to say the industry average globally probably sits somewhere between 50 and 70%, showing you that what really is needed out there is having a selection tool, or having selection tools and processes that are as predictive as possible for later job success.
And the reality is, though, that often the tools that are available in a digital format that are really scalable, and the ones that lend themselves to that unsupervised testing, they aren't perfect. They can't accurately predict, training success to a high enough confidence. So that does mean we still do need to invest heavily on in these sort of later stages, those in-person assessment centres where we're really trying to extract those clean candidates who are going to have high success in the training centre, and that is a big investment. Next slide.
So if you combine all these factors we just mentioned, the unique skills required, the high attrition rates, low training pass rates, the intensity of the training, and to a certain degree the lack of predictive tools, it is quite clear why there is a shortage currently out there in terms of ATCs. So why is the change needed? Because training failure carries a significant financial loss. These are the reasons why probably 10, 15 years ago, we started to really look at our recruitment processes and why we have refined them over time. The driving forces behind why we needed to adjust our processes was, if you pick the wrong candidates, there's just very serious negative consequences, both in terms of financial and resourcing costs for ANSPs, but also resulting in operational challenges if people do not make it to the training center and you end up with workforce shortages. There's also a real negative consequence for candidates themselves. If people are selected, they actually don't have the right skill set to be successful in their career. You basically set them up for failure, and you have a lose-lose situation. Another factor for us also was the change in requirements. So we were looking for a tool that allowed us to scale up quickly. Often it's really hard to predict what the workforce requirements are in 6 months' time. All of a sudden there's a large overseas recruitment drive, or people retire larger numbers than expected. So for us, having a tool that allows us to scale up our recruitment and selection efforts without needing a long lead time was crucial in developing the SureSelect tool we're currently using. And probably most importantly, having a tool that really focuses on the ATC competencies, allowing us to have a system that is as predictive of training and job success as possible.
And when we say geographical barriers, when we're out there talking in the industry, we do find that in-person supervised testing is quite common from those very first stages of screening, and that presents challenges too. We often have large countries. There's a large population we're trying to reach, and from what we've heard, we can have up to 60% of people who get invited to an in-person assessment centre might not show up. So that's a large portion of the population that might make really good air traffic controllers. And when you think about it, it makes sense. It's pretty common knowledge that it's a very small subset of the population who make a good air traffic controller. Somewhere between 3 and 5%. So if you're someone who's registered interest in the job of an ATC, you get an invitation to take what could be up to a day of time to travel to a location to do some in-person assessments for what might be a 3 to 5% chance that you are going to be the successful candidate. It's not too surprising that we do see such high drop-off rates for that initial in-person assessment. So that's some of the stuff that when we talk about utilizing cloud-based technologies, looking at doing things a bit of a different way, those geographical barriers and trying to really widen that top end of the funnel to capture as many of those applicants as possible, at least for that initial screening, was really important to us. Next slide. And so, as I said, my software development team is one that's been supporting Philip and Airways New Zealand in building the tools to support doing something different. And when we're looking at what success would look like, some of the key requirements that came through from Airways and our training academy was, one, we wanted something that was scalable. So we were trying to reach more candidates. We were trying to get more people in the top end of that funnel. While doing that, we wanted to make sure that the administrative overheads to manage that higher candidate count was going to be manageable. We're a fairly small or modest air navigation service provider, so we wanted to be able to automate as much of this process as possible to keep our overheads down. Being an ANSP, we have and the only ANSP in New Zealand, we are a state-owned enterprise. Our reputation is also really important to us. So we wanted to build our tests in a way that created a really positive candidate experience. We wanted to really promote and be good advocates for what it's like to work for Airways. And part of that was designing tests that are relevant. They have high face validity. When the candidates are taking the test, they do look and feel like a test that's relevant to the job of an ATC. Flexibility was also really important. So Airways really wanted the ability to change their approach as they needed, as time went on, or as the situation required. They didn't want to be restricted by the platform that they were using to be able to change the order, the way they deliver the tests, the balance between doing unsupervised testing and supervised testing. And we knew that would be something that would be important for other ANSPs potentially as well.
Another aspect that is really important to the overall success of our recruitment efforts really is that collaborative approach. That not only means that controllers are actively involved in the process. So we have about 80% of the people who are actually assessing the candidates at the assessment center are current controllers. They're trained to be sure select assessors. They come off rosters and they spend the day or sometimes up to a week doing assessment centers. But they're also the controllers were involved from the very start. When we looked at developing the sure select system, when we established the key competencies we're actually looking for, we always did it together with controllers. And I feel like overall over the years, what this has created is an atmosphere of general trust and also buy-in throughout the company. It's not an external process we force onto controllers. It is something we do as a team, and having controllers coming off roster, making recruitment decisions together with the people team and the training team really creates that buy-in further down the line as well. It's not just our candidates selected by the training team, it's the candidates we all selected together. Next slide, please.
And so what we've built, or should I say we're building, because it is always evolving, is Sure Select. And so Sure Select it's 15 years of sort of proven selection methodology in a cloud-based solution that was really focusing at targeting, a lot of those pain points and those success criteria that we were looking at before. So we did bring our air traffic control experts into that design process, and what we built is specifically designed for selecting ATCs. There was a big focus in unsupervised testing, something that we wanted to really explore. We thought it was going to be a real enabler of widening the top of that funnel and bringing more candidates in. We wanted the tools, or we wanted to be low administration. So we wanted to provide some tools that really made it easy for our administrators to start new campaigns, have people sign up, to track the progress of a campaign, the performance of tests, things like that. And we wanted to be able to easily identify those high potential candidates early, and we'll show you a bit of that when we do a demonstration soon. One thing that was important, and this was just from our experience over the years using other tools, was that particular tools can, and particularly in games-based testing, we found there can be a tendency for a bit of bias, they can be biased towards males. So we wanted to make sure that what we were building was selecting the best and brightest. It was unbiased, and it was data-driven. We also had experience using a number of different tools from a number of different providers. And again, there is a lot of benefit in that. You get a bit more flexibility, a bit more variety in selection, but we did find the administration of that was getting a bit cumbersome. Lots of CSV documents and manual processing. So bringing everything we do at each stage of those assessments, from the unsupervised automated stuff to the really hands-on in-person assessment centers, was driven by a single solution. And what we are doing is, we keep a really tight feedback loop. So as I said, it's something we use now. It's something that's always evolving, and there is very, very tight and regular feedback between Philip's team and my own. Next slide. So when we developed Sure Select, we were developing it to be as flexible as possible to enable choice. And like I said, it was really important to Airways to be able to adapt their approach as they needed. They didn't want to have to come back to us to change any one part, to change the order that they do it, to change the way that they might administer some of these tests. So, Philip, as the customer, has that full autonomy to manage that. We also knew that, for other ANSPs, often they have, or training academies often have an existing selection process. Changing any part of that process has an inherent risk. We're all looking for ways to improve our selection, to improve the predictability of success. However, we do have targets. We're trying to bring in a certain amount of new candidates a year into our training center. We're ultimately trying to train a certain amount of new controllers each year. So changing any one part of that can have risk with it. Changing that entire process more so. So we wanted, what we've built to be something that, it's effectively a pick and mix in the types of assessments you might want to use. Those assessments up the top there are the 4 core assessments that we've landed on at Airways as being sort of the right combination that, when used in order, really does get us down to high quality candidates before they get into that training academy. Again, some ANSPs will do all the testing in one go. It can be quite a lot of time. Others decide to just do a sort of a stage gate approach, where they'll send the first tests, and only the ones who make it through those will get sent the next, and so on. And then again, how you choose to deploy or deliver those tests. It could be unsupervised, supervised, it could be any combination of the two. The tool was designed to be flexible in that way. Next slide.
Okay. I will talk a little bit about the actual process we are using here in New Zealand. I'm not saying that this is the only or the best approach that you can use with the tools available. However, we've been using it for quite a long time, and it is really working for us. What we are trying to do is initially to keep the barrier for application as low as possible. We're not asking for CVs, we're not asking for cover letters or anything like that. People can apply in a very straightforward way, and they are then automatically being sent the first stage of the Sure Slate tests, which is the cognitive ability test, which we're using here in New Zealand. These tests are being completed completely remotely. Candidates, all they need is a laptop, and the first stage of testing only takes about 20 to 25 minutes. What we really wanted to do is to have as many people as possible applying into the funnel in those early stages. We're not spending much time looking through those candidates at this stage. If people score in terms of cognitive abilities above a certain cutoff point in terms of STEM scores, they're then automatically being sent through the Sure Select system the next stage of testing, which is the ATC skills test. Again, these tests are taking a little bit longer. We're thinking that if people made it through the first stage, they probably have shown a bit of interest, and then they're being told that they're done well. So there's a bit of incentive for them to complete the second stage of testing. We don't see a huge number of people not completing the second stage of testing after they're being successful in the first stage. Again, similar to the first test, if candidates scoring higher than the needed cutoff point, they then receive the third stage of remote testing, which is our ATC behavioral trait survey. During the cognitive ability testing, we're looking for very specific competencies. We call them detailed accuracy and coded reasoning. That's for our cognitive ability tests. For our ATC skills tests, we're looking for short-term memory, remembering relationships, and spatial reasoning. Candidates also complete a radar test. We're looking at a surveillance screen and seeing some moving objects, where we test their ability to multitask. The behavioral trait survey then establishes whether they have the right personality or behavioral footprint that is aligned with A, being a good trainee, and B, having the right behavioral traits to actually be successful and being able to sustain a long career as a controller. All these stages are more or less automated. The whole process internally is supported by only one person. We keep the whole early stage of the process admin light, as automated as possible, to have as many people applying as possible, so we're not missing any hidden talent, I guess.
We did actually have a question which was asking, are our tools adapted to different cultures? So yes, the tests themselves remain quite consistent. We can do customization for language and things like that. However, when we're comparing candidates, we establish norm groups for that local region. So we typically, with a minimum of 100 candidates that get run through the test, and they're the same type of candidate. It's an individual who's interested in a career in air traffic control. So we do establish norm groups for comparing the results of our candidates, and we do that locally based, so that those results are most relevant. And just on, I guess earlier I mentioned, that we can have up to 60% of no-shows for that initial in-person assessment when that's the first stage of testing. By doing this stage-gated, unsupervised component before we invite them into our in-person assessment centres, where we then do that kind of validation to check that they still have those skills, a candidate's then gone through 2 rounds of testing, and they know that they are now within at least the top 20% of candidates for this role. So all of a sudden they're not looking at a 3 to 5% chance of being successful. So that really creates that buy-in. And we do find we have much better participation rates at our assessment centre. Do you know what that would be for your assessment centres, Philip?
I'm glad you asked, Johnny. We don't. I don't think I can remember any person that has been invited to an assessment centre in the last 3 or 4 years not coming. So it's not really a problem for us. At this stage, people are really they're bought into the process and they're keen to come to an assessment centre. So no shows at these stages. It's not a problem.
Great. Next slide.
Just maybe to reinforce the underlying principle of keeping the funnel as open as possible and reducing those barriers for application as much as possible. For us, it's all about having a large funnel. We are not too worried about a testing effect. So we do allow people to only apply once per campaign, but once we open a new campaign, people can reapply. We've done some internal validation tests, and there is only a minimal testing effect in regards of if you keep doing these tests, do you score higher? We are not too worried about it. We're also backing our assessment center process enough to then validate those testing results. Candidates have to complete the pre-testing again in a supervised environment if they make it to an assessment center. At the same time, the technical tests we have incorporated in our assessment center would identify whether a candidate hasn't got the right cognitive abilities or ATC skills to be successful. So again, with the goal to keeping the admin side as light and flexible as possible, we're not spending a lot of time going through data sets and see how many people have applied and so on. We're keeping it quite lean and mean, really.
Next slide. So just to bring some of that stuff to life, we'll do just a short, I guess, demonstration through not the actual tests themselves. That could take some time, and what we really wanted to show was our dashboards that our administrators use to manage the recruitment and selection process. I will bring it up. We'll start on just our managed candidate screen here. So, I talked about automation. That was a really important part of this. So, we can put up an online form where people register their interest, and they can then, assuming they accept the terms and conditions, you might have some initial criteria that they need to meet. It might be a minimum age, for example. If they meet those criteria, they submit their form. They're automatically added into the current active campaign. These campaigns are set up and managed by Philip and his team directly. And the administrators can just see here, live at any time, and fairly small subset of test data here just to show the platform. But they can see as people get added to the list, they can see what stage of the testing they're at, how many of those tests have been completed, whether or not they failed or not, and were eliminated from the process. And then they can be invited to the assessment center from here as well. And so it's a really easy way for our administrators to determine, once they've got enough people, to host the next assessment center from the screen here. The other screen that's really powerful, used by Philip and his team, is our results dashboard. So this screen gives us a really clear and easy way to see who our best candidates are. So we can see all of the candidates that have completed tests. We can see the ones who have done the initial, as Philip mentioned, they start with those 2 cognitive ability tests. So we can see the ones who have not done very well in those, so they haven't been invited to the next stage. There's no manual process in that. They get an automatic email saying they weren't successful. If for whatever reason a candidate reaches out and they question why they weren't invited to the next stage, the system can automatically generate a report that we can send out to them. Just need to get that screen. Oh, get one I loaded earlier. And we can, the system can generate a report that we can modify if we need to, and it provides a real clear information about why they did not succeed. This candidate's actually done fairly well in all of theirs, but again, it's data driven, it's scientific information, so it makes it really easy for us if we do get those challenging interactions and questions. We can send this report, and it provides all the information that the candidate needs to really understand what's happened in their testing. The other really good thing about this dashboard is it allows us to generate an Excel report that's in a similar format to what you see online. Some people prefer to work in Excel, allows them to integrate with other systems, to create tables, to do sorting and filtering. If they're using other selection tools as well, it allows them to bring those in too. Holds that same nice color-coded layout. And what this report does too is it creates a average STEM score. So it gives you an average score against all of the testing that you did. And it's effectively ranking your, everyone who did the test, it's giving you a rank of who is the best and who is the weakest. Again, we wanted this non-biased, data-driven tool. We wanted to make it really easy to decide, where to draw the line. Often it can be, depending how many you're wanting to bring into your training, you will get a line that is the easy admissions. You will then get the line where it's a bit more of a grey area. We're typically fairly strict around the left side of this table, which is the skills and technical ability stuff. If you don't meet the criteria for any number of these, you will not be invited. However, for the behavioural traits, which is the ones out to the right here, we have a bit more flexibility. Those technical tests are telling us, will you be a good air traffic controller? Those behavioural traits tests are telling us, can you be trained? Will you be a good employee? And so you might have a deficiency on this right side of the table that might not necessarily mean you will not get admitted. It will just inform the training plan. And that's the other thing that the system will do as well. It will automatically generate interview guides as part of that in-person assessment centre based on those behavioural traits questions and those results. So if you did have an area that you were weak in, there will be specific questions generated in this report to make it easier for the instructors to make sure they're covering off what they need to in those interviews. Anything else to add?
I think you mentioned the most important things. That data set it's pretty small as an example, but you can imagine if you have a couple of hundred people applying and you need to make a relatively urgent decision of who to invite to an assessment center, the system really is a godsend. It does a lot of the pre-culling for you. It provides the guidance. Who are the candidates that have the most potential? And you mentioned a little bit. What I really like about it is, look, at this stage, we don't even look at their names or their background. We don't know much about these candidates. It is really a non-biased, data-driven process. We're looking for the best suited candidates without any form of non-data disadvantage really at this stage. And I think overall that's a really great strengths of our system.
And we'll hand back control back to the slide pack.
So we talked a lot about keeping the process admin light, resource light, flexible, responsive, and this is all true. However, there's one aspect of the process where we probably go in the opposite direction. Our assessment centers are very intense, for the lack of a better word. Once we identify these high potential candidates, we try to really get to know them throughout our assessment center. As mentioned earlier, we have about 80% of the people who do the assessing to an assessment center are controllers coming off roster, and we're doing a couple of very specific activities during the assessment center. I personally think the pre-selection, cognitive abilities, and so on are a very crucial point. However, the magic ingredient to a certain degree that enables us to have the high 95 in on-the-job training, even higher than that, training success rates is what we assess and how we do it during our assessment centers. So assessment centers in itself, it's not a new concept. They're probably part of a lot of ATC recruitment processes. However, what we do is, as part of the SureSelect system, it is all cloud hosted. It is all, it can be deployed anywhere in the world. We have designed specific individual ATC exercises. So these are a tower exercise and a surveillance exercise. And we also have a group exercise where candidates together have to control a shared airspace together. These exercises are designed for people with no prior aviation or ATC experience. However, our controllers, they're often also instructors, they spend about 90 minutes to 2 hours with a candidate going through those exercises. We are looking for things like, is a candidate able to remember instructions? Is a candidate able to say no? What's the short-term memory like of a candidate? And so on. It gives you a lot of insight on how trainable and ultimately successful a candidate would be. If you could please go to the next slide. So the screenshots there show you the exercises we're using. This slide, it's quite full, has a lot of information on it, but it hopefully shows you the sum and amount of data we are gathering throughout the process, but particularly during the assessment center. So we are at the assessment center looking for 9 specific competencies. That is planning and time management, problem identification, procedural accuracy and completion, communication, making contextual decisions, customer service, responsible and reliable, teamwork, and having a positive attitude to learning and change. Some of these competencies are important for the career, and some of these competencies are important to being a good trainee. The rationale behind our assessment center is to have at least 2 sources of evidence for each of these competencies. So you can see the different aspects we're running during the assessment center, our individual exercises, an interview, our behavioral trait survey, which is part of the pre-selection, as well our ATC skill simulations, again, part of the pre-selection, and our group radar exercise. That shows you the different sources of evidence we get for each competencies. What that SureSelect system does, it integrates all data points that have been gathered throughout the whole process and actually creates, again, a form of ranking. In the end of the day, we have a score for each candidate, looking at all the different competencies that were assessed, and we're sitting together as a team, and most of the time we have a pretty good idea whether we would like to proceed with a candidate or not. So again, in short, keeping it very light and fast in the early stages of the funnel, and then spending a lot of time with very specific ATC exercises looking for specific ATC competencies, I personally think is one of the main reasons we achieve our high pass rates.
Next slide. And so this slide really just brings together, I guess, everything we have talked about so far. It really shows those different components, those stage gates that we're doing at each stage of selection. And every campaign is different, but generally these sort of percentages you see on the funnel is around the amount of drop off we see at each stage. So everyone gets that cognitive ability test first. It's usually roughly around 20% won't make it to the next stage. The ATC skill simulation is much more intense. It is a longer set of tests, and it can be up to 80% of those who have made it through will not get to the behavioral traits. And then that last layer, the assessment center. So we are down to about 12% of those initial people who initially applied have been excluded before we even bring them into that in-person assessment. Of that 12%, we're then cutting that in half again, effectively. And again, it varies depending on the size of the group. We can have assessment centres where all candidates make it, but it is that stage of the process, as Philip talked about. It's a big investment that we make. It's a full day, it's a busy day, and that's where we're getting them down to about 6% of the initial group are getting invited to the training academy, and you can see that that's sort of what the pass rate is once they've been brought in.
What I just quickly would like to mention is that we are taking a lot of credit for the high pass rates, and they are definitely a contributing factor, but without having then the right training that follows that selection process, we wouldn't be able to achieve those pass rates. And that's not only our ab initio training, that's also then our operational and on-the-job training. So it's not just about finding the right needle, it's then also making sure that the needle gets the right training, I guess.
Next slide. Oh, last slide. So yeah, just to finish on, the role of the ATC, it hasn't significantly changed in the last 10 years. There has been technological advancements. We do have more systems that are allowing us to control more aircraft, but the core role of the air traffic controller has not significantly changed. So the testing methodologies and the ways that we're testing are still relevant today for selecting controllers, but we are seeing, we are in this kind of exponential growth, age of technology, and there is a lot of stuff on the horizon that may mean that over the next 10 years we might be looking for a different type of individual. We're looking at the horizon, AI, machine learning, remote and virtual towers, for example. So I guess just one question to leave you with is, and it's something that's on our minds right now, is what do we need to be doing now to be able to select for ATCs for today's roles, but also for the future. Next slide.
Well, thank you, Johnny and Philip. We have a very good attendance for this webinar, showing that there's a lot of interest in this subject, and there are quite a few questions that have come in as well. And I do have a question myself. Perhaps I can ask first. You mentioned the ATC assessment center. Assuming another foreign air navigation service provider is interested to use SureSelect, how are they expected to set up an ATC assessment center, or are they they're going to use the Airways New Zealand assessment center? How does that work?
We actually have been rolling it out to another ANSP, our assessment center. So initially, it is probably easier to use the early stages of the SureSelect process. You wouldn't need any assistance with that. However, all aspects of the assessment center are available on the cloud. So all you really need is internet access, and you would have access to those individual exercises. The function that interview guides are created based on a personality profile, the function that the rankings, everything is available regardless of where you are located. If you would like to really, or if an ANSP really would like to adapt or switch to the assessment center, which I feel like is a key ingredient in the whole process, there would be a little bit of initial training involved. So we would probably send assessors, or have some of the ANSP's assessors come to us and just give some guidance around how to run those individual exercises. I think the interview part and the group exercise part are quite straightforward. The individual exercises, we recommend a short initial training course and a little bit of supervision to make sure that these exercises are run proficiently, and that you're actually also looking for the right evidence displayed by the candidates. But look, after a shorter training period, a training provider or ANSP would then be able to use all aspects of the process, including the assessment center, without us.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. Is manpower,
just quickly.
Do you
Oh, sorry.
do you require a big team to do the assessment? Big team of operational air traffic controllers to do the assessment?
So currently, how we run our assessment centers, we have a team of 8 assessors for an assessment center a day. You need about 6 of those assessors to be controllers. So yes, you do need a certain amount of controllers. There's a couple of options we're looking at and how to potentially reduce that and splitting up different aspects of the assessment center. But at the moment, there's a need to free up 6. It can also be instructors, 6 operational controllers to be able to run the full assessment center.
It is a big investment, and we know that it is. The assessment center is the one that, you know, when we're out there telling other NSPs what we do, those unsupervised digital tests, they're fairly simple to deploy into what you're doing. You can pick and choose. It's digital. That assessment center, when they hear, you know, the amount of resource that they are operational controllers, so you're needing to get them off the roster. So for different ANSPs, that is a real challenge. The case we make is that, you know, the cost to the business to invest in that is much less than the cost to the business to bring candidates into your training center who are destined to not succeed.
Yeah, you mentioned the unsupervised assessment. There's a question from the audience about this unsupervised assessment, which is that how do we know that the actual candidates are actually taking the test rather than, you know, they could have called the air traffic controller friends to help them?
To be honest, in the early stages of the testing, we don't. We're potentially looking at options with video ident and things like that. But for us here in New Zealand and for other customers, what we're doing is at the assessment center, candidates are required to redo a subset of those tests in a supervised condition. To be honest, in the last 6 or 7 years, I don't think we had a case with suspicious results. Sometimes the results vary a little bit, mostly due to nerves, and we then ask the candidates to redo the whole testing supervised, just to make sure that they are initially were the person who had completed the test. And at the same time, if you would have gotten someone else to do those tests and score these high scores, you would really struggle during our individual exercise during the assessment center. So we have that added line of security to make sure that the person there really has those capabilities.
We also find that we tell the candidates before they take the test that you will be checked in person again. Just telling them that is a massive deterrent to cheating and dishonesty. So we have always discussed because with technology you could have a camera taking a photo and all of that, and it's always been saying, we said we can definitely do that if we need to. It's just never been needed. Just telling a candidate you will be checked, doing a validation in the assessment center. As Philip said, we've never had a case of suspicious activity for us or any of our customers.
Right. Okay, let me take another question. Selection of candidates progressing to assessment center are based on results from cognitive test results and behavioral traits. Will one be eliminated based on behavioral traits alone?
To be honest, it's a really tricky question. What we're looking for is having a well-rounded candidate, having scored high in the cognitive ability ATC skills, and also having a personality profile that is not extreme. So if we have a lot of scores that are sort of around the 1 or 2 mark in terms of STEM scores, it probably would be enough for not exclude them to include them to an assessment center. If we do have a little bit of, let's say, warning signs around the behavioral results, we do have that added safety function of our interview guides that incorporate those results, and we would really dig deep during the interviews to get a feel for the areas of concern. So extreme results, yes, would exclude candidates. People scoring a little bit more sort of averagely, we probably still invite them.
Okay, there's another question here about the passing rates, some of the numbers that you have mentioned. Does the pass rate refer to the completion of the training within the training organization, or does it refer to the completion of the on-the-job training as well?
So the last I checked is that our overall pass, right, including our ab initio training, initial training at the college, at the training center, and then our on-the-job training in a tower or surveillance position is 95%. So that includes the whole training process from ab initio to being a rated controller.
So that's very good. Yeah, that's very high success rates. Okay, there's another question. Is more like a comment that some air traffic controllers today, especially for you mentioned Africa, they do not have much exposure to technology prior to the recruitment test. So the way this recruitment test has been designed is obviously, there's some bias on the more the software and the digital aspect. So that being the case, are we not limiting the access to this profession, this air traffic controller profession, by using an electronic selection process rather than a manual selection process?
Yeah,
it's
a great point, and I guess no one solution is going to be perfect. We did have that in mind, that the tests themselves are designed to be really simple. The process is designed to be as simple as possible, to make it as accessible as possible. And I guess, the ultimate outcome, right, is to reach as many people as possible. We think that the way we've gone with unsupervised and leveraging the cloud technology, yes, it might exclude some, but we feel like we are now reaching much more, particularly when you look at that, potentially up to 60% of people just inviting to a supervised assessment as the first gateway, being able to reach that 60% that we weren't before. We think, yes, we might be, reducing a few possible candidates, but we think we're reaching more as a result.
Yeah, we're still having many questions coming in, but we are almost out of time. Let's take one last question. I'm going to combine two questions into one. There's a question about criteria for selection, and there's another question on academic results. How important are academic results? Because one of the tests that you have is cognitive test. So is there a very high bar in terms of academic qualification and passing of achieving high cognitive test results?
I think there has been a debate for many years. How do you look at the academic side of things? I know that some ANSPs require candidates to have a degree, for example. In New Zealand here, we probably have gone the opposite way. Depending on the age of the candidates, there are no main requirements in terms of having an academic background. We really only looking at those abilities displayed at the test. I understand there's probably a different view out there at times when it comes to having a certain academic skill set, particularly when it comes to physics and math. For us, this is not something we have been looking at, and
some of our best controllers were baristas with no prior education before that. So yeah, it's not something we think is relevant. We think the tests we are doing are finding those key skills and strengths that we need in this role, and we don't want to limit that pool anymore by adding a tertiary qualification requirement.
Really keeping it focused on those ATC competencies, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I wish we can go on, but I'm afraid we are out of time and I have to bring this to a close. From the attendance of this webinar and the questions that we have been receiving, I can see that there's a lot of interest in this subject. So I hope our audience have found this useful. Do let CANSO have your feedback. It remains for me to thank Johnny and Philip. Thank you so much, and for our audience to have a good day. Goodbye.